What was your ultimate flex when you were a child? I had an electric scooter, must have been flexing hard, since some parents would harass me for riding it on school property after school. I had one lady who was so jealous that she would follow me on my way home and scream, "You need a license for that thing." I checked with the police. Meanwhile I'm 13 years old riding a toy designed for kids. CPS 2000 Super Soaker. The most powerful super soaker to ever hit the market. Some idiot of a person threw it in the trash as they thought it was just old. I miss it a lot as nothing compares to being physically exhausted trying to get those final charges in to pump it up to full power. When you maximumed it out, you knew you were about to do a lot of damage. First to discover Minecraft in my school and spreaded the word around. You got to flex over that. I was the first to discover Minecraft in my middle school, but everyone just called me gay for playing it instead of Call of Duty. It finally got big when it came out for $4, but nobody would have it when I tried to pull an "I told you so." Bonus, my terrible username I still use to this day is the name I came up with in a sudden moment of inspiration in the PE locker room in 6th grade to use for a Minecraft Let's Play. I could say I'm more epic than you in every episode. At the time I legitimately thought it was the best idea I'd ever had in my life. I even made this Reddit account to ask a question in a notch Emma. I used to brag that I knew Esteban from Sweet Life of Zach and Cod's full name until one day one of the popular kids came up to me out of the blue and asked me to say it, and I panicked and messed up, and he told the entire class I was a fraud. So anyway, that's what keeps me up at night. Do the longest skit on my bike at the end of a dead-end street. The trick is to lean forward and take some weight off the back tire, but I didn't share that with anyone. I wanted to win every time and I did. I was on the front page of the newspaper with my head stuck through a hole in the bottom of a cardboard box that was filled with jelly beans. I made the newspaper as well in my hometown. In 8th grade, I got to march in my first Christmas parade in marching band. We were required to wear Santa hats with our uniforms, but there were no specific rules at the time about colors, so I wore a red velvet Santa hat with a leopard print trim. It was a cool hat, and it made the local newspaper that week. This was in 1998 in a small town. Twas a scandal. Band directors were cool with it at the time, but the next year, they implemented a rule about no alternative Santa hats. Took away my parents' computer privileges when they tried to take mine. Used dad's password, backed up his data, reinstalled Windows, made myself administrator, made them accounts with password protection. The next 4 hours were me refusing to give up the new passwords until I was given my own computer. My 11-year-old brain was just on fire that day. Long story short, my mom was fuming. Every threat under the sun, screaming, etc etc. Which was fine. I just mentioned how easy it would be to delete that recipes folder she kept on the desktop if she didn't, and I quote, calm down and talk to me more maturely. My dad, however, after 2 hours of messing around with the PC, was just impressed. Couldn't believe his 11-year-old pulled a power move on him. Eventually he caved and spent 3 more hours attempting to communicate with the demonic beast that is my mother until she agreed to my terms. I got to keep an old computer in my room on the grounds I put everything back exactly how I'd found it. And that, my friends, is how I learned about leverage. I used to be a silent but bright child. Everyone wanted to be in a group project with me cause I did all the work. Then I get the idea to do the presentation alone with my teacher without that group knowing. I got a full score, the group failed. And of course, they could not do anything to me cause that would only prove that I did indeed do all the work in the eyes of the teachers. Yo-yos were a big trend in my school. My uncle had recently come back from Japan and presented me with a Japanese X-Brain yo-yo. X-Brains were considered the best yo-yo you could buy in the UK after a yo-yo pro called Johans won the championship with one. Word spread around school that not only did I have an X-Brain, but a super cool Japanese X-Brain. Everyone wanted to be my friend, and I even had icky smelly girls offering to be my girlfriend if they could share the yo-yo. I was 10 then. I'm 27 now, and that's the coolest I've ever felt. I was already reading at 3.5 years old and basically at an adult level by 6. I vaguely remember, and my mom confirms, visiting my older brother in school while they were all learning to read and the teachers not believing it at first, then reacting to it in an almost negative, this is unnatural sort of way. I was really good at pull-ups. I could do 30 to 40 at once. One day during recess, my middle school teacher challenged me to a pull-up contest. BTW, he was old enough to have leg damage from polio, walked with crutches, so he made up for it by having massive upper body strength. Students admired him. He was a great human and teacher. I won by one pull-up. Not sure I actually won, or he threw it to give the otherwise terribly awkward and mostly friendless kid who happened to be able to do lots of pull-ups a win. I was the loser who played in the sandbox until like grade 6. Maybe this was more normal back then IDK, but it seems like 6th graders are all playing sparks and stuff now. Anyways, I had the best sand trucks, since I was the only one who knew where to get Bruder toys from. They're these big toy trucks made out of some pretty heavy duty plastic, so they're basically indestructible against anything a child could do to them, but they were also made to look exactly like real vehicles. While everyone else had the very toyish looking machines, I had actual licensed Caterpillar bulldozers and backhoes and Mack dump trucks and stuff. Ironically, the store where I got all this stuff was like 2 minutes away from the school and somehow no one else knew about it. I'd casually order a pizza when out with friends, because I was the only one who had a job from 8 to 12 years old. They all had to go ask their parents for money. I always had hundreds of dollars in my wallet, which was a stupid idea. Man, I'm hungry, me too. I'll go ask my mom if she can order something now. I'll call OIP and get a pizza. What do you want? I was the biggest girl and wasn't afraid of tussling, so when the boys tried to pick on my friends, I'd just sort of stand there and mean mug them so they'd go away. One time I did shove a boy down in mud because he pushed my friend into some mud and tore her dress. Every time he stood up, I pushed him back down until he said he was sorry. He tore her dress, man, and it was filthy to boot. That shit won't fly. I always took the lunch money my mom gave me and used it to buy candy when the daycare bus would stop and let us buy snacks. Eventually the school called my mom to tell her that my lunch account was extremely overdue. My mom was combative, saying there was no way, since she gave me lunch money every day. Lunch lady explains to her they have been telling me about it for weeks and I always would say I would bring it but never did. This was kindergarten, so they never let me go without food, so my tab kept building. They would stamp my hand, but I would always wash it off before I got home. My mom had to pay the money that day. We lived check to check. My mom budgeted everything and always knew how much money was coming or going, so she was pretty pissed off course. The next day I had my hand out for money when she was dropping me off at daycare, and she laughed at me and said she wasn't giving me money anymore, she was dealing with it directly then on out. My 6-year-old self of course got upset and proclaimed I always need money in my pocket while slapping my shorts pocket. My mom laughed again and drove off. Ironic cause now that I think about it, in high school I got caught up in a drug bust. A friend was selling his prescription Adderall. I happened to play middleman for a different friend wanting some. Friend got caught by their mom with the pills. Friend snitched. Then we went to alternative school. Dad was giving me lunch money and left $20 on my dresser with a note for lunch, not drugs. Love, Dad. It was one instance in kickball during elementary school. I was the scrawny kid, about average speed, but can't kick the ball far at all. Basically the kind of player everyone moves up when you're about to kick. Now we had a rule that we sometimes used where, if there's a bad player, that is me, another player can either kick for them or run for them, but not both. One guy on my team approaches me before I'm going to kick and says, "Let me play for you. I can kick you a home run, and I can make your kicks a home run as well." I tell him I can kick a home run myself despite having never kicked the ball past second base. I go up to get ready to kick, and I go to kick the ball, and it doesn't go very far at all. Fortunately nobody caught it, but one of the best kickball players, both on offense and defense, ran over and was ready to get me out by pecking me. I knew there was no way I'd make it to first base before I get pecked, so in a split-second decision I fell onto the ground. I remember there were some girls just standing by the side laughing about how I tripped, but then everyone started to realize my plan. The kid that tried to peck me was a great player and can throw a ball really far. And he wasn't holding back in this instance. The ball zoomed through the entire rest of the playground. I was able to make it home before anyone was able to even get the ball.